Hello there, welcome to another episode of the Valkyria Chronicles with Ungini Titan. So the current situation is that after the last battle in the Barrios Desert, Welkin, Alicia and Faldio go exploring in the Barrios ruins, particularly in the Barrios Temple, which is actually on this map. There on the eastern side of the map. It's the dominant building on the eastern side of the map. They run into the Emperor Maximilian and Sylvania. Sorry, that should be Silvaria. And Silvaria has a lance-like object in her hand. They don't shoot the Emperor, although Alicia wanted to, and the Emperor doesn't kill them because he feels that this is a sacred place and he shouldn't spoil it by spilling blood in that location. The Emperor has regained his tank, the Batomys, which is a kind of a super tank, land battleship type thing. And Silvaria has gone off to deal with essentially the rest of the Gallian militia. Now, this is my first attempt at the battle. It actually took me, I'd say, 3 or 4 attempts at the battle, about 4 or 5 hours of playtime altogether, to actually solve the problem of this particular tank, because it's more of a puzzle than an actual battle. This is not a thing that's won by firepower. It's won by figuring out the correct moves to enable you to win in the time you've got allotted. You're told at the start that you lose, obviously, if Welkin dies. You lose if the Batomys reaches your final base, and you lose if 20 turns go by. But in practice, you're never going to get 20 turns out of this battle. So the first mistake I discover is that you can't actually walk across somebody deployed in the middle of a trench. And these trenches are deep enough at this location, you can't get out of the damn things either. So this is effectively rendered Yoko impotent at this particular point, and completely the wrong choice to make as my first move, so that's a waste of a command point. In actual fact, and I have a sniper up here as well, which is also a complete waste. You only need one sniper in this scenario. I did figure out how to use snipers properly over the course of this battle, and I did get better at driving the Edelweiss, though not by much. The terrain around here is awful for driving the Edelweiss as well. There's an awful lot of stuff that you just can't enter or can't go near, and it's not necessarily obvious why you can't turn the tank and why it's not moving forward. It's relatively obvious from comments made by Largo and others at the very start of the cutscene. It kind of opens the battle, that you're not going to take down the Batomys by conventional firepower. That the armour is just too thick, that it's probably immune to lances and probably nearly immune to fire from the Edelweiss. It's also reasonably obvious that front gun would probably one-shot the Edelweiss if it's in the firing arc of that gun. Now, the firing arc of that gun is pretty narrow. The more flexible gun is the one at the back, and the one at the back is at least as powerful and probably slightly more powerful than the gun on a regular Imperial tank. It's also obvious, or it's made known to you, kind of the one of the things you have to be careful of, and that you can usefully do, is shoot the machine gun turrets along the side of the Batomys. This Batomys has 6 machine gun turrets, 1 at the front, 2 at each side, and 1 at the back. And it is actually imperative that you destroy those as quickly as you can and as early as you can. Now, I send Alicia up here to deal with the Gallian forces up here, but to be honest with you, it was probably unnecessary. And I don't do it in any of the subsequent evolutions of this battle. I mostly send a sniper up here, but I do make sure that the sniper finishes their activity in... it takes about 3 movements to get a sniper up to this location, and I do make sure they finish in cover, because if they're not in cover, the stormtroopers will kill them. Your priority targets when you go up there are the enemy sniper, which I've never allowed live. Also, don't start the sniper from the location I did. Start the sniper from the nearest possible location in the trench where Largo is in, to get them up there to where Alicia is in 3 moves, because once you go past 3 moves, the reduction of movement each time is so great that it's like, what do you call it? Xeno's frog, is it? You know, where Xeno's paradox, where the frog jumps half the distance each time and they'll never reach the end of the meter. Or the measurement, or whatever, the distance they're supposed to go, because they go half the first time, half the second time, half the third time, and they'll never quite reach the end, because there's always something you can divide by for half. Well, movement's a bit like that in this system. So if you take more than 3 moves to get somewhere, it's unlikely you'll get there, because the diminishing effects of movement after the third impulse is so great that it's not worth spending the command point on. So you better do something else if it takes more than 3 moves to get there. The sniper's target when he gets up here, his priorities in my opinion are the enemy sniper. Like I said, never allowed get into action, so I don't know what his priority targets are, but it's probably going to be your lancers and stuff like that, and you don't want that, and the enemy lancers. The shock troopers and the scout I wouldn't actually worry about too much, as long as they're not in a position to be, as long as your sniper's not going to be the open when they activate. The enemy shock troopers and scouts are going to prioritize your second base, not the northern one, the one there on the western side of the map, just straight to the left of where the sniper and Alicia are. They'll prioritize that one until it's captured, and once that's captured, they will then go back towards the Batomys and provide supporting fire for the Batomys and shoot basically targets of opportunity among your defenders that you have, which will probably be your lancers or your engineers, and you need them. The Batomys, left to its own devices, will systematically drive through each of your bases in turn. It won't attempt to capture the bases, it'll just drive down on them and crush them and destroy them utterly, so they no longer function as bases, which I think is one of the reasons why the enemy shock troopers prioritize the second base, because they can use that as a position to bring on reinforcements, and if you deprive them of it, you don't need to stop them capturing it, you just need to make sure they don't have it for a full turn, that they can't actually bring reinforcements on via that mechanism. Because if they do manage to bring reinforcements on, it'll make your life a hell of a lot more awkward, and it's going to be difficult enough anyway without that kind of hassle on top of it. Your engineers' priorities, in my opinion, are probably resupplying the repairing the Edelweiss, resupplying the Lancers, possibly resupplying the Sniper, but I would be prioritising keeping the Edelweiss alive and resupplying the Lancers. They also can be the guys used to take out cooling units on the Batomys, which you will see activating later. Now, the enemy appears to have quite a lot of command points, but the thing is that pretty much everything on the Batomys requires a command point to activate, so all the machine guns are separate entities to activate. I think the main gun is the only thing that activates with the tank. Even the rear turret, I think, is a separate entity to activate, so it all costs command points. Obviously the main gun, I think, will shoot the Edelweisses in the arc of fire, although it didn't shoot it there. I'm not sure whether it's in the arc of fire or not. It prioritises stuff like crushing the base. It also prioritises, same way with the rear mounted gun actually, the other actions are prioritised before shooting the Edelweiss, despite the fact, or at least in the first or second turn of the game. The enemy Lancers, however, will, if they get the opportunity, prioritise shooting the Edelweiss. You can see this guy now is a scout, and he's going heading straight for the base by the shortest possible route, and the shock troopers will follow him down that trench, but they'll stay they won't have the movement, so they'll just stay in the trench. But they'll follow up to the base if the base is still unoccupied. The most useful thing the player can do, you can do as the player, actually start taking out the machine gun turrets on the Batomys. Because there's pretty much little else that you can do. And it is very important that all those machine gun turrets are removed. Now, the priority would be the side turrets. The rear turret, the front turret can be left to last. It's not an immediate priority, although it is better off if you can get rid of it. You know, a much easier life, should we say, if you don't have any remaining turrets on the Batomys operating, any of those machine gun turrets operating on the Batomys by the time the situation gets critical, and it gets critical pretty quickly. So we activate Marina, and she just dies instantly because there's 2 machine guns pointing at her. Generally, anybody that's under fire from multiple machine guns, or anybody that's under fire from the tank's defensive machine guns, the Batomys' defensive machine guns, for any extended period, will just die. There's no way around it. The best thing you can do is you maximise the use of cover. Try and set things up so the cover only that only one gun, one cannon at the time can get at you. or that you're only in the aggro range of one cannon at the time. The other thing is there's cover on the other side. The lance where Largo is the southernmost lancer there, his position has some cover, so he can actually expose himself to the fire of one machine gun pod at a time rather than both together. If you use them properly, but I didn't necessarily do so. Now, to take out those machine gun pods, 2 shots from the Edelweiss. A shot from the Edelweiss and a hit from a lance will do it, and it takes about 3 hits from a lance to do it. However, lances will, like in practice, it takes 4 to 5 shots from a lance to actually take out a machine gun turret on its own. The lances have quite a high chance of missing. Now, the Edelweiss can miss too. It depends. Range will cause you to miss, obviously enough. As you can see, you've seen in other battles that the lances are more effective the closer they are. But angle can make it also more difficult to hit those machine gun pods. And you can use the Edelweiss for cover. If the Edelweiss is too close to the hull of the tank, it can actually have problems hitting the nearest machine gun pod. So that is also a problem. So you have to keep the Edelweiss beside the Batomys, so there's outer range of the front and rear guns. But there's almost no way of staying completely out of the range of the rear gun. It's just that sometimes if you're not, the rear gun usually won't kill it. If the Edelweiss is at full health, it's not going to be one-shotted unless the rear gun gets a shot onto the radiator. And similarly with enemy lancers. The worst thing that can happen to you in the Edelweiss is you get hit with a combination of enemy lancers and the rear gun. That can take you down pretty quickly, which is one of the reasons why the sniper should prioritize the enemy lancers if they're out of the game. You have some breathing room, should we say, that will allow you to take action against the Batomys before things go south pretty rapidly, and they will go south pretty rapidly, as you will see as things progress here along. I have found for the most part that you don't really need to bring along reinforcements unless you run out of engineers or something like that, or lancers. But you only need the lancers in the early game. I suppose they're useful at all times. It depends on how you're going to play. The Edelweiss. But if you have to keep the Edelweiss alive, I think the Edelweiss will usually be positioned well enough to survive to the end game. So we're trying to get out the so we're having a position here to fire at one of the machine guns. It's an angle shot, so it's going to be hard enough to hit, but we managed to take it down. Now, as you can see, 2 more shots like that would take it out. So, how exactly do you take out the Batomys? Well, very good question. Well, the first thing you discover is that obviously it likes driving down in your camps, and there seems to be nothing you can do to stop it. Or at least that's what Welkin thinks. However, Captain Verrott has a bit more experience and points out something to him. Definite touch of megalomania here on the Maximilian's part. So here you get your first clue as to what you can do. Now, I misinterpreted part of this. The standing runes are... the unstable walls are the actual ones that are kind of upright, so they're taller than they're wide. The walls that are kind of lying flat are obstacles that are already in place. So as you can see, the militia forces east of the temple are in trouble, which is going to put you on. It's the major source of time pressure you're going to have, is that you've got to get this thing sorted out, and a certain level of it sorted out. Now, I think it's kind of triggered by the script so that you can actually spend time getting to do stuff, but if you, it's as you complete certain stages of the objective of taking out the Batomys that trigger the next steps and the next development in the situation. So you won't get told about collapsing the walls until the Batomys has actually taken your first camp. Like we can see here, I'm within the range of the guns, but the Batomys has prioritised taking the second camp over shooting the Edelweiss. And they've done it. Now this it turns out to be, it's more of a hindrance rather than a disaster, because I can easily retake the camp, because the scout actually won't stay in the camp. He'll come back out to support the Batomys. However, I wouldn't be inclined to leave the camp in the enemy hands, because like I said, the problem of reinforcements then becomes a serious issue. That's actually a severe blow there, because the Lancer has taken out the threads, and that's going to screw up the movement of the Edelweiss, and it's going to make things a lot harder. So at this point, yes, we're suffering damage to the Edelweiss, and this is going to become critical later on. The other thing is, of course, like I said, that I have misinterpreted exactly what walls I'm supposed to collapse. And poor Largo is under fire as well, and this is going to compound the situation, because I'm going to utilise Largo completely wrong in my turn this time round. Now the second Lancer decides to take a shot at Alicia. Chance to hit her wasn't great, and she has her evasion anyway, so she's a good chance of actually evading fire. Although if she did get hit, she would be pretty much taken out of it. So again, the Edelweiss has been in the position of the rear turret gun twice now and not taken fire. So at the early stages, you can chance it and get away with it. The problem is, of course, the Lancers did the damage instead. And we haven't quite removed this Lancer from play, so it's important we just get rid of him as well. So we're going to have to activate Alicia a second time, I think, to get rid of the Lancer, and also to get her back into position, because she's going to be out of position there. She's not going to be much use to me later on if I don't bring her back. Plus, she's probably one of the few units that's capable of getting back in time to reach the base that's been just taken, to give myself a chance to retake that base. So we get her this far in the second move, so we can make a third move with her and probably get her up to at least give support. We could probably retake the base of the engineer, because it's currently unoccupied. An unoccupied base can be taken by anyone. Well, it's not like an engineer couldn't take the base, but they have to kill an occupied base. You have to kill the defender. So I've moved her again. Don't really want to move her anymore, because I'm not getting the value, so to say, out of her. And I'm going to use Carl instead and bring him down, and use him to occupy the base. And they should be in a position then to act as mutual support units to each other as well when they're close enough together. So we can get Carl up, we can probably get Carl right up into the base, and yes, we can get him right up to the flag. He's close enough to trigger aggro from the enemy scout, so we might as well shoot back at him, man. I probably again should have used his little bit of extra movement to actually get him in by the sandbags and get him to kneel down so that he had the benefit of the sandbags, but I didn't do it. It's something you should take really advantage of every action point that you have to maximise your sort of defensive capability. Now I completely screw up here with Largo, because he's under fire from multiple machine guns. Now if you are crouching, you do get the benefit, I think, of the cover. And then I fire at a building that was completely, was already collapsed. There's no point in doing it. I better off actually fire at the scout. I think, thinking that I don't have a clean shot, I actually bring him out. Now I'm under the fire from the scout and from the machine gun. But he's tough enough so far that he survived. But the trouble is, if I activate him again, the tank will be further forward and he'll be in a much worse situation. So we have Walter out here in the open, and Walter's just taken a heavy hit from the Batomys turret, and I then make the mistake of attempting to move him. I'm not sure what I was thinking of doing. I was probably thinking of getting him into the trench or something like that, but just got him killed without actually achieving a whole lot, and then I decided to kick off some reinforcements. I think this is the only run through the game where I decided to actually summon reinforcements. I think by and large waste of time, unless you were stuck for an engineer or stuck for a scout. I wouldn't bother, because there's usually more useful things you can do with your action points on the map, and you don't, as you go along, as you progress through the various steps of this thing, the number of units you need actually diminishes, because the amount of utility you can get out of the individual units diminishes. So now we decided to get the Edelweiss back into action again, and I'd have been better off, I suppose, if I did this at the start. Bring him up beside the tank. Now we're running into the problems here. See, this is kind of, again, a wasted shot. I don't even have the angle for the other building, but I seem to be completely unaware of the fact that what I needed to do, and I was doing the wrong thing there completely. So I've wasted quite a few command points doing stuff that's just a waste. The enemy's phase, and now I'm going to probably pay a price for a lot of the stuff that I have been doing wrong. Well, there goes the wall. That wall was already down. That's the one that I was shooting at, which was totally necessary for me to shoot at. And there pops up the coolers, the radiators. So Welkin notices the main cannon, but Sarah is observes the mechanical impact of the radiators, and their heat sinks were dim, and obviously we can use them to damage the tank. So this becomes our next priority, is damaging these radiators. So the trouble is that you can only damage them when they're up. Otherwise they're inside the armoured housing of the tank and you can't touch them. And they only pop up when the main gun fires. So you want the main gun to fire 3 times, and then you want to destroy each radiator as soon as that main gun fires, so that you can destabilize the tank, basically, and make the tank vulnerable to destruction. The problem, and this is where the puzzle element comes in, is you want the main gun to fire. The main gun will only fire at the Edelweiss or obstructing walls. You don't want it to fire at the Edelweiss, because you'll have no Edelweiss left and you'll lose the scenario. So you have to arrange for 3 obstructing walls to come in front of the Batomys. Now one of them is already in place for you. The next obvious wall is the one just north of the base that I recaptured. There are 2 more such walls on the way up towards the final base. And there's a final wall in front of your final base. So each of those represents an opportunity where the main gun will fire, and each of them will then represent an opportunity for you to destroy a radiator. But to get near the radiators, you have to have had eliminated the machine guns, because otherwise nobody's going to survive long enough to get at the ladder. So you need to get at you need to destroy the machine guns as well. Now, if you dedicate yourself to destroying the machine guns from the get-go, you can actually take out most of them. But you're going to have most of them gone at this stage of the game. That bit is straightforward enough. It's just a matter of applying firepower to the problem. The keeping the units alive while you're doing it, I suppose, is the trickiest bit. That's where the Edelweiss comes in, because you can use the Edelweiss to take the initial damage to it, and then you can finish them off with Lancers, and you can use the Edelweiss as well as a barrier, so as to reduce the number of turrets that can shoot at the Lancer, where the Lancer is coming out to engage with the turrets. The other difficulty, that each time you destroy a radiator, the situation escalates. Other stuff happens that are essentially scripted into the fight, and they escalate the situation for you, so that the stakes become higher and things become somewhat a bit more difficult as well each time, up to a certain level. There's a kind of a limit at the end of the difficulty to it, but by that stage you will have destroyed 2 of the 3 radiators. And I think they're probably scripted on the radiators rather than on the turns. Now, I do something odd here. I actually destroy the rear radiator rather than the one that I'm on the level of. I've never been able to replicate this. It was a fluke that I got the grenade in. Most of the time the grenade fails to go in these circumstances. And I wouldn't have destroyed the radiator. So it's important you throw the grenade into the right radiator. Because otherwise you're wasting command points and making life more difficult for yourself than you need to do so. So as far as I can tell, as soon as you destroy the first radiator, then Varrot pulls out squads 1 and 3 out of the east of the temple, and that releases Salvaria to come and reinforce Maximilian. You basically have a turn's grace. So you have one more turn, and then she turns up, and she brings more troops with it, and she is a major complication on her own. You might think you could leave an engineer standing on or a trooper standing on top of the tank, but it turns out they get thrown off when the tank moves. I tried this. As you can see here with Ramsey, I just leave her up there and I finish up. She just gets tossed off the tank when the Batomys makes its move. So we attempt something with Largo. He doesn't have enough hit points left to do anything and he just gets blown away. And of course, Largo getting taken out of it costs you command points. Similarly, if Alicia gets taken out of it, or Rosie, or any of those, you lose command points. That's how I discovered also that Largo is at least up to this point in the thing. I don't know how far into the game, but he seems to be a plot protected character. Other characters get overrun by enemy units, they die. Largo gets overrun by enemy units and he retreats. So, I don't know if all characters are plot protected. Well, no, I know they're not all plot protected, but I don't know if all plot protected characters remain plot protected throughout the whole storyline. For instance, Rosie is plot protected as well, to a certain extent, but I don't know if she's plot protected throughout the whole storyline or not. Alicia is not plot protected, for instance. You can park the Edelweiss in front of the Batomys, but it'll drive into it and remove a ton of hit points. Fortunately for me, it didn't kill it. But I did die later on anyway, so I'm not for lasting much longer in this particular scenario. And in the next probably 2 episodes, I will go through the successful version of the encounter where I actually made things work. I still made mistakes, but I managed to get things to work. There are some room for error, but it's tight enough. You need to get it sort of the timing of it right and do things reasonable clarity. Otherwise, you've screwed up and you've lost the round. The thing, of course, is you can't progress the story without completing these missions, so it's just a question of trying again. Biggest problem with the game that way is that there seems to be only one save slot, and that's it. So you be careful about when and where you save the game. So the back around to our turn, and here I decide, right, I'm going to have to repair the Edelweiss because I'm in serious trouble at this point. So I take the risk of bringing Ramsey around under the gun of the front machine gun port that's still operative, which is why it's worth getting rid of all ports. Eventually you want freedom to be able to run right around this tank if you can manage it. We get the Edelweiss back up, but not up to full, and this is important. Now I decided I was going to try and rescue Largo, but I didn't get Ramsey as far as Largo, just the 2 machine guns on that side. That's it. It's just too much. Even 1 machine gun can be too much, even for relatively tough characters, and engineers aren't the toughest. So I'm going to use Yoko to try and take out the last rearmost turret. Even though I don't need to take out, strictly speaking, I don't need to take out the rearmost turret because I've actually taken out the rear radiator cell. However, it's still probably worth doing because it just clears up movement on that side of the tank, and the turret is still blocking access. For instance, I couldn't evacuate Yoko from her location. Now, as it turns out, I think in the run through I succeeded in, Yoko finished up in that trench at the end, and she was just... I didn't use her at the very end because she was just too far away, and she wasn't the most efficient. It was well off to leave her there. Because to get back, she would have had to go through the Imperial forces that had arrived as reinforcements, and that just wasn't worth it. So if you do want to get her out of there, you got to do it early in the game, but then you got to get rid of the machine guns on the Batomys in order to be able to successfully execute the maneuver. It's kind of a, you're caught one way or the other. So we bring the Edelweiss around. What I probably should have done here was actually brought down the obstacle the wall that stands currently between the Batomys and the second base, instead of shooting the turret, because if I manage to slow it down enough to get another main gun firing again, then I have the opportunity in that phase, should we say, to bring up an engineer and or a scout or whatever, and after taking out the turrets, to take out or to put a bomb into the radiator. So the Batomys now moves. I have run out of movement. I've run out of options, and the Batomys won't make it to the base in this turn. It'll take 2 movements for the Batomys to do it. Now he orders this if he's nothing else to be doing. He does this nearly every turn. Makes a difference, I guess, but not a huge amount. They just operate with these orders. The problem is that he hasn't got much stuff left to play with. We've taken out most of his forces, so what happens here is he moves the Batomys into position and he blows the Edelweiss out of it, and that's it. It's game over. This will be continued in the battle that actually worked out, so I hope you found it interesting and enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. If you have not already done so, please give the channel a subscription. I will catch you all soon. Goodbye for now.